Gandang umaga po. Dito ulit tayo. Ah, 11 pa lang kayo. Hintayin natin yung iba, ha? At the same time, nakalimutan ko. Magpapalit ako ng salamin. Ang hirap nito, eh. I'll use another one. But meanwhile, share screen tayo. Ayusin niyo yung attendance natin, ha? Let me see. Okay. Attendance. Asan na yun? Ito. Okay. Hopefully, kita niyo yan. Okay. Attendance. Can you see that? All right. Fill that up. Ayan. So, attendance, ha? Huwag kalimutan. Duty natin sa ating mga kababayan. Of course, we allow room for excuses. So, okay lang. Basta maliwanag sa atin. So, for today, pag-uusapan natin ito, definition ng philosophy. Yan. Alright, yan ang pag-uusapan natin. Nag-share natin. Yan. Yan ang pag-uusapan natin. Dito ko ilagay, mas maliwanag. Definition of philosophy. Classic and modern senses of the term philosophy. Alright? Yung classic, edi yung panahon ng mga Greeks. Yung modern, edi yan yung panahon natin ngayon. And turns out, marami palang ibig sabihin, eh. Alright? So, yan ang ating topic. Pero bago yan, tayo muna ay mag-mentimeter. Alright, mentimeter tayo. Para habang hinihintay natin yung mga kaklase ninyo, hindi pa tayo kumpleto, eh. Alright, so, check that out, mentimeter. Yan, nasa Google Classroom natin, naka-stream. Kita nyo? Mentimeter discussions, day 3. Grabe, ano? Third day na tayo. Ang bilis ng mundo. Okay. Dali, ha? Let me go to... Alright, nandyan naman ang link. So... Given the link, punta kayo doon sa ating presentation. Yan. Yan ang ating presentation. Oh, 6 pa lang ang pumapasok. Bigay ko rin sa inyo yung code, ha? Just in case. Bigay ko sa inyo yung code. Alright. Ito yung code. Lagay natin dito sa comments. Yan. Oh, yan ang code. Ngayon, pinag-usapan natin earlier, nabanggit ko mental models. Nung panahon namin, philosophy ang aming ginagamit na expression. Itong generation ninyo ngayon, ang ginagamit nila, instead of saying mental model, what they use is the expression, rather than using the expression philosophy, ang ginagamit ninyo ay the expression mental model. Alright, meron tayong mga puzzles that we have to deal with. Pinag-usapan natin yung rising sun from the east noong first day, and then second day, may nabanggit tayo tungkol sa pamimilosopiya, kaya lang bitin. Sabi nga natin sa philosophy, importante ang demokrasya, di ba? Kung hindi na-invento yung demokrasya, wala tayong philosophy. Alright? Review nga tayo, review. Alright? Ito first slide. Yan, sagutin nyo nga. Sana humabol yung iba, ano? Yan ang ating unang tanong. When two individuals look at the sun, one an astronomer, another someone ignorant of science, do they see the same thing? Dalawa will say yes, but they interpret differently. They interpret differently. Uy, lahat? Walang nagsabi ng no? Uy, may no. Tapak niya. Outlier. May outlier tayo. Isa, sino kaya yan? Talagang taga-UP siguro. Matigas ang ulo Outlier. Baka gusto mo magturo. Kaya lang, pag magturo ka, kawawa ka naman. Walang pera dito Pwede ka magkapera habang nagtuturo. Kaya lang, magsa-sideline ka. Pag nag-sideline ka naman, mapapabayaan mo trabaho mo. Huwag na lang. Alright? So, there you go. We asked that question earlier but hindi nyo alam kung ano yung nasa isip ng mga kaklase nyo. Ayan. Turns out, meron pala tayong outlier kahit isa. Alright? Meron pa tayong mga kaklase hindi makapasok kasi yung kamag-anak ay na-COVID. Ay, nako. Kawawa naman. Alright, let's move on. Do parallel lines intersect? Alam niyo ba kung ano yung parallel lines? Nakakabili niyan sa krus na ligas. Biro lang. Do parallel lines intersect? Parang, sir, nagtanong pa kayo, no? Di syempre hindi. Apat. Uy, yes and no. Yes, meron talaga tayong matitigas ang ulo, May isang yes, may dalawang yes and no. Uy, kayong nagsasabi ng no, ilan yan? 11? Niloloko kayo nung 4, Yes daw. Parallel lines intersect. Alright, balikan natin yan mamaya, next question. Nothing wrong when people see the same world differently. Masama ba yan? Masama ba yan, Anong palagay ninyo? Tingnan nga natin ang mga sagot nyo. Yes. Walang mali dyan. Sabi naman ng isa, yes and no. Yes and no. 8. 9. Yes and no. Parang yung sinabi, matangkad pero pandak. Gwapo pero pangit. Kayo naman, yes and no, sige na nga. Alright, 4 say yes, nothing wrong. Pag sinama mo yung 4 sa 9, 5 na. Sinama mo yung 5 sa 9, 16. Isa lang ang nagsabing no. Papaano nga naman, Kung mag-asawa kayo, husband and wife, pagkatapos magkaibang tingin nyo sa mundo, naloko na. Paano kung ikaw tatay, tapos yung anak, tatay at anak, magkaiba ng tingin sa mundo, suntukan na lang. Alright, we'll get back to that. But that tells you what democracy is all about. Yes? Ano ang nangyari? Ito, hindi ko ito nabanggit sa inyo last time pero importante ito. Alright? Anong nangyari sa Greece? Tingnan muna natin, Two individuals looking at the sun, one an astronomer, another ignorant of science, do they see the same thing? Yes, but they interpret differently. That's most of you. Ano pa yung isa? Do parallel lines intersect? Most of you said no, but guess what? May nagsasabing yes, may nagsasabing yes and no. Ibang klase, di ba? And then sabi natin, nothing wrong when people see the same world. Sabi ng iba, wala naman talagang masama. May nagsabi isa, masama ho yan Yung iba naman nagsabi, Masama at hindi masama, naku, naloko na. Alright? Now, balik tayo dito sa akin muna. Baka nami-miss nyo na ako eh. That's what democracy is all about. You should realize that not all of us see the same thing not all of us see the same world in many ways. Alright? Balik tayo sa sharing. Tingnan nyo naman ito. Greece. Alright? I just have to check. Nadidinig nyo ba ako? Comment nyo lagay nyo rito kung hindi nyo ako nadidinig do you hear me? Pa-English pa, no? Hindi pala, no? Can you hear me? Yan. Sorry, Can you hear me? Tell me, pagka hindi nyo ako madinig kasi dun sa isang klase ko na-disgrasya kami. Alright, so let's get back to business. Greece. You remember that? Excuse me. Greece. Teka, ilipat natin. Mas maganda to. Mas malapad. Ayan. Mas malaki, di ba? Alright. So, view full screen. Yeah, better. Right? Do you remember, we discussed, nagkaroon ng tectonic plate movement. Alright? Tectonic plate movement. And ano nangyari? Ito umakyat. Ito bumaba. Ayan. And ano nangyari? Nagkaroon ng unique geological formations dito. Alright? Unique geological formations dyan. At dahil doon, naging one, martial ang societies ng Greece. Alright? And two, naging maritime ang kanilang societies in characteristic. Alright? Maritime. Alright? Yan. Anong ibig sabihin yan? Well, babalikan natin. Diba? Sinabi naman natin, pinag-aralan na natin yan eh. But, merong negosyante rito. Bakit? Kasi meron ditong isang civilization. May negosyante rito. Bakit? Kasi meron ditong isang civilization. May negosyante rito. Bakit? Kasi may isa pang civilization dito. At lahat sila nagtagpog-tagpo doon sa Crete. Di ba? You remember? And itong pang-apat na sibilisasyon na ito ay kagaya ng lahat ng sibilisasyon sa buong mundo, ruled by absolute rulers, Solomonic powers. Alright? Kaso, itong isa, itong nasa Crete, naputokan ng bulkan. So, sobrang lakas ng putok ng bulkan, on a single day, nabura yung sibilisasyon dito. And ano nga ang sabi natin? If you remember, dahil nabura, naging liberal ang attitude towards religion ng mga tao riyan sa Greece. So, one, martial society sila. Two, maritime. And three, liberal ang kanilang religion. Alright? Ano namang pangyayari? Hindi naman nawala ang mga negosyante, di ba? Pinag-usapan natin, hindi nawala. Nandito pa rin sila. Nandito pa rin sila. Nandito pa rin sila. And they look for an alternative place of refuge during inclement weather. They found Athens. Excuse me. And thanks to the unique situation, Athens came to have, under the leadership of Solon, and later the leadership of Cleisthenes, came to have what? Came to have democracy. Yan ang usapan. And nung nagkaroon ng democracy, anong nasabi natin? Alright, democracy. Ang nasabi natin, nagkaroon ng attention sa one, reasoning. Alright, reasoning became very important. Ano pa ang sabi natin? Sabi natin, dahil nga sa reasoning, nagka-synergy ang mga ideas. Alright? Among other things. O, ngayon, idagdag ko yung isa na nakalimutan kong sabihin. Anong nakalimutan kong sabihin? Pang tatlo, napaka-importante. Alright? Ano yung isa pa? Sabi natin, or dapat malaman natin, nakita nila ng mga Greeks that kings, generals, alright, kings, generals, and priests can be wrong. Priests, alright, can be wrong. Alright, ayun nga ang sabi natin sa demokrasya. Pwede magkamali. Kahit 19 sa inyo o 20 ang nagsabi, parallel lines do not intersect, pwedeng mali sila. Bakit hindi? Alright? So, very important. Sa demokrasya, nalalaman natin, lahat tayo, walang exemption. Lahat tayo pwedeng magkamali. Oh, importante yan. Sa maraming society sa mundo, hindi ganyan ang attitude. Noon, ngayon dumadami na. Pwede tayo magkamali. That's the point. Alright? So far, so good. Yan. So, ano ngayon? Alright? And ito, balik tayo sa akin. Ito nga yung sabi nating pag-uusapan natin, definition of philosophy. Ang term philosophy ay sa totoo lang, may dalawang types. Ang term philosophy may dalawang types ng definition. Yung unang definition, tawagin nating classic definition. Yun yung una. At yung pangalawa, tawagin nating modern definition. Now, saan ang galing yung classic definition? Alright, saan ang galing? Well, paliwanag natin. Alright? Una, dapat mapansin natin, ang unang-unang mga pilosopo, ito, sina Thales. Alright? Bago sa panahon nila, ito, 620 BC hanggang sa 546 BC. Itong 600 years BC, dyan na-invento yung philosophy. Pero, sa totoo lang, yung democracy mas nauna. At sabi nga natin kung hindi na uso yung democracy, edi walang highlighting ng reasoning. And walang synergy ng ideas, hindi sila nanalo siguro against the Persians. At the same time, itong pangatlo, importante. Bakit? Kasi dahil nagka-demokrasya at nakita nilang pwede palang magkamali ang mga hari, ang mga general at saka ang mga pare, nagkaroon ng pagkakataong maimbento ang philosophy. Ayun. Alright? So, balik ulit tayo. Tuloy natin yung kwento, ha? Yung panahon na naging dominant ang Greece. Saan naging dominant ang Greece? Din Alright? Nauso. Dito sa area na ito, ang democracy. Pati yung Egypt, nadamay Yung Egypt, walang kinalaman doon sa gera ng mga Persians, pero nadamay. Alright. Tanong, saan pinaka-dynamic ang development ng English language? Ang layo naman, English language. Seryoso ako. Saan unang nag-develop dynamically ang English language? Sagot, di siyempre sa England. English Alright? Ngayon, nung una, sa England, ang dynamic development ng English as a language. Dumating ang panahon, hindi na sa England. Dumating ang panahon, ang development ng English language nandun na sa United States. Saan? Sa Boston. Saan? Sa New York. Saan? Sa Chicago. Saan? Sa Philadelphia. Mga big cities sa East Coast, Eastern Coast of the United States. You know, teritoryo ng Celtics. Celtics na tinalo naman, anak ng tinapay. Alright? Alright, so, dun sa Eastern Coast na United States kasi, napakalaki ng human traffic. Kasi newly discovered ang Americas, new world with so much promise. And so yung mga Europeans from everywhere in Europe, you know, Germans, Italians, French, you name it, everybody went to the went to the Americas. And so, dahil sa laki ng traffic ng humans, yung area na iyon, ano yung area na yon? Yung Eastern Coast na United States, naging very dynamic. English ang ginagamit doon. So, yung development na English, bumilis. Mas mabilis sa United States, later called United States, and kaysa sa England. Excuse me. Pero ngayon, hindi na ganun. The most dynamic development of the English language is where? Big question, ha? Dito ulit tayo, baka na-miss nyo. Okay. Saan most dynamic ang development ng English language? Di doon sa Seattle. Alright? Saan pa? San Francisco. Saan pa? Sa Los Angeles. Alright? Doon sa Seattle, nandun yung Microsoft. Doon sa Seattle, nandun ang Amazon. Sa San Francisco, big time. Nandun yung, well, north of San Francisco, nandun yung Silicon Valley. You know, Oracle and everybody is there. Yung Los Angeles, south of Los Angeles, nandun yung Google sa Stanford. Big time. Now, these days, ang pinakamalaking traffic ng humans ay between East Asia, kasama tayo doon. East Asia and the United States. Nandyan yung mga Hapon, nandyan yung Koreano, nandyan yung Chino, Pilipino, Singaporean, Malaysian, pati mga Indiano, alright, nandyan. Between Asia and the west coast of the United States, ang laki-laki ng traffic ng humans. So, dyan ang most dynamic. So, anong kinalaman yun sa usapan natin? Wala. Gusto ko lang magkwento. Alright? Ito yung kinalaman yan. Alright? Share ulit tayo, ha? Ito kasi, dati, if you remember, meron ditong empire, di ba? Yung Persian Empire. Ay, sorry, mali. Hanggang dito yan eh. Meron diyang Persian Empire. Dito naman, meron ditong Egyptian Empire. At marami silang contribution sa sibilisasyon. Kaso, meron din naman kanyang contribution, aring Greece. Alright, so, ano nangyari? Yung overlap between the three, ito, naging very important region. Itong area na to, naging very important region. Alright? Kagaya ng nangyayari ngayon sa West Coast na United States and earlier sa East Coast na United States. Nandyan ang the best and the brightest. Isa dun sa the best and the brightest na napunta riyan, somewhere here, alright, yun na nga si Thales and his followers. In fact, noong ancient times, si Thales ang pinakang sikat na individual. Abay, alam niyo ba kung gaano kagaling yung si Thales? Siya ang umimbento ng philosophy. Di ba magaling? Alright? Excuse me. Si Thales, inimbento niya ang philosophy. Later, pinagpatuloy ng kanyang mga... Kasi nga, nandito sila sa very dynamic area na ito. Alright? Now, si Thales, kagaya ng iba pang mga Greeks, ay steeped in democracy, sanay sa demokrasya. Nandun siya sa area na influensyado naman ng mga Persians, kaya lang naka-take over sila panalo silang mga Greeks so conqueror sila. Natutunan ni Thales yung una, mathematics ng mga ancient peoples. Natutunan niya yan. Ano pa ang natutunan ni Thales? Ikalawa, natutunan niya hindi lang yung mathematics, yung calendar making ng mga ancient peoples. Eh bakit importante? Remember, ang mga ancient people, tanga. Bakit? Eh hindi nila kayang ma-predict ang future eh. And every time they want to predict the future, they talk to the gods and the deities, di ba? Eh merong mga individuals matalino. Naka-imbento sila ng mathematics. Check. Naka-imbento sila ng kalendaryo. Check. Eh dahil naka-imbento ng kalendaryo, nape-predict nila kailan dadating yung buwan at walang buwan. Kailan dadating ang high tide at low tide. Kailan dadating ang tag-ulan at hindi tag-ulan. Ang spring at hindi spring, very predictable sa kanila. Alright? At dahil napipredict nila, ang tingin sa kanila ng pangkaraniwang tao, yung matatalino na yan, eh sila mga kausap ng Diyos. O, ay hindi naman alam ng pangkaraniwang tao na may kalendaryo pala eh. Alright? Ay di kausap nila ang Diyos. Oh, eh di by the time sila na nga yung mga priest kings at sila na nga mga emperors. And for the most part, sikreto ang knowledge about mathematics and calendars. Sikreto. Alright? Eh, kaso itong sikreto na ito, natutunan nga nitong si Thales at kanyang mga kasamahan. Nung natutunan niya, sinabihan siya ng mga Persians. Sabi ng mga Persians, at saka sinasabihan din siya ng mga silang mga Greeks, ng mga Egyptians, na, uy, yan ay sacred knowledge. Sacred knowledge. Parang yung alam ni Harry Potter. Sacred. In other words, yan ay only for the chosen people. Chosen people. Oh. Eh, siyempre, kung ikaw ba naman yung emperor, naka-imbento ka na nga ng kalendaryo at saka mathematics, eh di gusto mo, ang may alam lang yan, anak mo, di ba? Parang dapat ang may alam lang yan si Sarah at saka kung sino man, alright, ng mga anak. So, meron kang monopoly, di ba? Eh, eto si Thales, galing sa demokrasya. Alam nyo, sa demokrasya, gusto ng mga tao, iboto sila. Siyempre, miski nga ako, kung iboboto ako maging senador, eh di bakit hindi? Alright? Eh, ang ugali ng mga gustong maboto, yung lahat ng may pera, eh di bigay ng pera, parang si Manny Pacquiao. Oh, so, ang gagawin nila doon sa Greece, yung mayaman, nagpapagawa ng public bath. Kasi mahirap yung hindi naliligo. Nagpapagawa ng public swimming pool. Nagpapagawa ng bridges, alright, donated by this rich fellow that everybody appreciates, alright? Nagpapagawa, and most of the time, nagpapagawa ng mga fountains kung saan kumukuha ang mga households ng kanilang tubig, ay di masaya sila. Ngayon, yung mga walang pera, hindi naman nasasabihin, ay sorry na lang kayo, wala kayong perang i-share. Hindi naman ganon. Yung mga walang pera, ang ginagawa nila, nag-share sila ng knowledge. Excuse me. Kung ikaw ay nakagawa ng magandang kanta, i-share mo yan. Nakagawa ka magandang poem, i-share mo yan. Nakagawa ka ng pamamaraan, ng paggawa ng magandang haligi ng bahay o magandang pinto, or you have knowledge, you share it with everybody. And then because everybody knows you're so intelligent a person, then they vote for you. So yan ang ugali ng mga Greeks. Hindi lang sa na-highlight ang reasoning, hindi lang sa nagka-synergy ang mga ideas, hindi lang sa nalaman nila all of us can be wrong, including kings, generals, and priests. Alright? Gustong-gusto nilang mag-share hanggat kaya. Parang si Duterte. Hindi pala. Aray ko, nakakatindi lang ako. Parang si Manny Pacquiao. Yan. Alright. So, when they learned about mathematics and calendar making, sabi ni Thales, let's share. Sabi ng mga Persians, no, that's sacred knowledge. If it falls into the wrong hands, then the gods will be angry. Oh, pilosopo. Parang taga-UP. Anak ng tinapay. Pardon the expression na, puta naman, niwala ko sa iyo. Kung ako si Tales, sasabihin ko doon sa mga person, puta na, conqueror nga kami eh. Alright, Diyos nyo yan. Tapos Diyos nyo, bibigyan kami as conquerors ng gift of the gods because we are chosen by them. Stupido, di ba? Di debate. But cut the story short, sabi ni Natales, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Greek ako eh. Gusto ko mag-share. So Thales shared his knowledge about mathematics and calendar making. Ano ang nangyayari pagka nag-share kayo? Ha? Ano ang nangyayari pag nag-share kayo? Akala nyo malayo sa logic tong usapan, ha? Malapit na malapit to, pati sa artificial intelligence. As you will see later. Ano ang nangyayari pagka nag-share? You get to have discourse. You get to have discourse about some subject matter like mathematics, artificial intelligence, information technology. Nagkakaroon kayo ng chat group, Facebook group. Dahil may discourse, maraming information you get, maraming information, marami kayong nagagawa. Alright? Doon sa discourse na pinangunahan ni Thales, dahil nga usap-usap lagi sila, naisip nila, and guess what? For thousands of years, hindi nangyari sa Persia, hindi nangyari sa Egypt, alright? Hindi nangyari sa Persia, hindi nangyari sa Egypt. Ano yung hindi nangyari? For thousands of years, hindi nangyari na naisip nila, kagaya ni Natales, sabi ni Natales, hindi may discourse nga, no? Sabi na, meron pala tayong tool. What kind of tool? It's a tool with which we can predict the future. Alright? Sasabihin ng mga Persians po, tayo na, no-brainer. Sabihin ng Egyptian, no-brainer. Alam namin yan. Kaso si Natalis nga may discourse nadagdagan yung, these are tools which we can use to predict. Tools we can use to predict using our capacity to reason. Ayan. From the point of view of the Persians, from the point of view of the Egyptians, parang yung tayo, no? Yung araw ay stationary or yung araw ay umiikot, naglalakbay. Ganon din kay Natales at mga Persians. From the point of view of Thales, this is a tool with which you can predict, and in addition, on the basis of your capacity to reason. Itong mga Persian at saka mga Egyptian, ito lang sila Alright? Kasi for a long time, na-mystify nila. Kasalanan nila Ministify nila yung mathematics pagdating dito kay Natales, demystified ang mathematics. So it's a tool with which you can predict on the basis of your capacity to reason. And the capacity to reason is yours, as we can see all throughout the centuries of democracy. You can predict independent of the gods and the deities. Alright? Importante talaga yung democracy, independent. Alright? Of the gods and the deities. Independent of gods. Never na-conclude yan ng mga Persians at Egyptians. Kasi mystified sa kanila ang mathematics and calendars. Alright? Diyan importante yung pinag-uusapan natin do you see the same thing? They did that. Thales and his friends saw something that the Persians have never seen for thousands of years. Same with the Egyptians, same with the Chinese. Bukod tangi, only in Greece merong ganyan. Bakit? Kasi, look, highlight ulit natin, look, independent of the gods and the deities, di ba? If you say that in China, you die. In fact, in China, more than 1,000 years bago sa panahon ni Natales, may nagsabi na ng the same thing. And guess what? In China, they said the same thing. Those individuals are buried alive in public by order of the emperor. Kasi sabi ng emperor, independent of the gods and the deities, putang ina, iniinsulto mo ang mga Diyos, pati ako, ha? O, di yari ka sa akin. O, they get buried alive. But in Greece, it was all right. They were liberal so far as their religion was concerned. They were democratic. You can say what you want. All right? Di ba? Ang laking diferensya. And so, ano nangyari? By asking that question, pwede pala. Ano yung pwede? That you have a tool with which you can predict the future and therefore have control over your destiny, and on the basis of your capacity to reason, and therefore independent of the gods and the deities. Meron ka ng halimbawa yung mathematics at saka yung calendar. So, ang next step, sabi ni Natales, maghanap nga tayo ng other tools like it. Baka may kamag-anak at mga pinsan, magamit din natin. Alright? And that's what happened. By asking that ultimate question, might there be other tools with which we can predict the future? Independent of the gods and the deities? Dependent on our capacity to reason. Nung tinanong nila, that's when they actually literally came to invent what we today call philosophy. Wala pang science noon eh. Science would come in the 1500s, the 16th century. Alright? That's how philosophy has come to be invented. Yan. Philosophy. Na-invento ni Thales. Ay, mali. Na-invento ni Thales at saka ng kanyang mga barkada. Alright, philosophy. So that's it. Very good. And makikita ninyo, napaka-importante. Kung walang demokrasya, malabong na-invento yung philosophy. And when they began looking for other tools, like mathematics and calendars, they came to, finally, invent biology, they gave it a name. Invent physics, they gave it a name. I already told you. Invent logic, they gave it a name. Invent geometry, you're still... No. Logic and geometry, you're still required to study this, and so on and so forth. And we were saying, alam na nga nila, the world was round and the circumference was 40,000 kilometers long. Alright? Ang galing, di ba? Yan. And later, of course, philosophy will give birth to science. Now, anong kasunod ng usapan natin? Alright? Actually, yung word philosophy, yan. Yung word na philosophy, yung term, ay hindi na-imbento ni Natales. Yan ang problema. Alright? Si Natales, alright, baka barkada niya, hindi lang naman siya, may discourse nga eh. 620 to 546 BC, sila ang naka-invento ng philosophy. Ang problema lang, when they invented philosophy, it was only a hobby for them. Parang kayo, leisure hours lang. It's only when they have leisure hours available, they would dabble with philosophy. Parang kayo, pag may pera at may leisure hours, and then, therefore, you go to, where do you go to? Starbucks. Alright? Ay, wala na palang Starbucks ngayon. So, when you have leisure hours, manood kayo ng Cobra Kai. Yan, sa YouTube. Mamayang gabi, Cobra Kai ako ng katakot-takot. Alright? So, hobby lang. And the hobby, the activity that they had, the discourse, they did not give it a name. They had a discourse, but there is no name. It was Pythagoras. Ayan, si Pythagoras, It was Pythagoras who gave it the name. Now, Pythagoras was a student of the student of Thales. All right? He came a generation after. So, Pythagoras, all right? 570 BC to 495 BC. All right? He came a generation after. Ito si Thales 620 to 546. Ito si Pythagoras, 570 to 595. Nag-overlap ang kanilang lifetimes. Pero, si Pythagoras was more known to the student of Thales of the name Anaximander. Excuse me. So, paano na-invento ni Pythagoras yung term philosophy? Kasi si Pythagoras, wag na magalit ha, si Pythagoras ay LGBTQ. Sensitive na tao. Mabait, sensitive, religyoso, at mahilig sa poetry, mahilig sa music. Nung na-discover niya yung pamimilosopo ng estudyante ni Thales, si Anaximander, sabi niya, I want to spend my entire life doing philosophy. Yan. Maraming scholars, hindi nila napansin yan kaso magaling ako, di napansin ko, di ba? Nagigiro lang. Ngayon, imagine nyo kayo si Pythagoras, you will spend your entire life doing philosophy and then you don't even have a name for it. Paano sabi ni Pythagoras, putang ina, I'll spend my life on it, I don't even have a name for it. Dapat meron. And so he invents the word philosophy or philosophia from the expression philos, all right? The expression philos, meaning to say love of something. Nang sabihin ng philos, love of something or deep interest in something. All right? Deep interest in something. All right? And the other word is sophos, which is the singular form, or Sophia, the plural form. All right? Sophia, the plural form, meaning to say wisdom. Yan. Very good. Yan. Salamat kay Pythagoras na invento yung word philosophy. And so, here he is, spends his entire life doing philosophy. Ang daming naniwala sa kanya. Sa dami ng naniwala sa kanya, nakabuo siya ng isang community. Hindi lang community, naging religion. Yung pamimilosopo nila, naging religion sa iba, pero not necessarily with Pythagoras, yung original na Pythagoras. Parang yun nangyari kay Jose Rizal, di ba? Yung mga sumunod kay Jose Rizal, ginawang religion, Rizalista. But anyway, balik tayo dito. Hindi lang yan ang contribution ni Pythagoras. Meron pa. Si Pythagoras, sabi ko nga sa inyo, ay sensitive na tao. Mahilig sa poetry at mahilig sa music. Guess what? Excellent lyre player. Hindi pa uso gitara nun Hindi pa rin uso yung ukulele. Lyre meron sila. Now, naisip ni Pythagoras, pamimiloso po niya, you pluck one string of the lyre, you get one tonal value. You pluck another string of the lyre, another string you get with another length, you get another tonal value. If you can see here, magkakaiba sila ng length, yung string. So, one length, one tonal value, and each length, each tonal value. Now, surprisingly, he says, if I pluck several strings together, sabihin natin 3, o 4, o 5, I get a tonal value that can never be produced using any single length whatsoever. So, unique. Unique tonal value when you pluck several strings together. They gave it the name, and we still call it that name chord. So, merong chord. Alright? Parang pag naglalaro kayong gitara, puro chords ang pinag-uusapan. Excuse me. So, yung discovery niya, meron palang chords, pero ito yung more important. Kasi yung iba naman, alam nila yung chords eh. Pero si Pythagoras may analysis eh, kasi nagpi-philosophy. Sabi ni Pythagoras, when you have one kind of chord, you get sweet sounding sound. Sweet sounding music. Sabi niya, pagka ganon, ay di tuwa ka. Alright? Pero hindi ka natutuwa all the time eh, sabi niya. Sometimes, you end up with a chord that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand. Oh, eh di ba iba yun? Ang tawag natin dyan, may discordant chord. Discord. Alright? Eh ano ngayon? Ito si Pythagoras. Alright? Sabi ni Pythagoras, when you have a sweet-sounding chord, it means what? It means you have harmony among the different components of the chord. Kasi pwedeng 3, 4, 5 strings together, alright? Eh iba-iba ng ano yon, ng tonal value. But when there is harmony, the resulting tonal value is sweet. Conversely, when there is disharmony, there is discordant sound. Alright? Now, focus your attention on harmony. Today, we have the expression coherence for the same thing. Saka na natin pag-usapan, pero ipapakita ko lang sa inyo. So, sinasabi ni Pythagoras, may coherence yung mga iba-ibang sounds to form a chord that is sounding sweet. Alright? Now, hindi natapos dyan. Alright, kasi sinasabi rin ni Pythagoras, when you have a thought, today the sun has risen from the east, and another thought, yesterday the sun has risen from the east, and another thought, the day before yesterday the sun has risen from the east, and another thought, and another, then you connect them to one another, you inevitably conclude, as a rule, whenever the sun rises, it rises from the east. Then, you can now say, if tomorrow the sun will rise, it will rise from the east. And then, therefore, you can have a technique by which you can predict the future on the basis of your capacity to reason. And therefore, you can have control over your destiny. And so, in other words, lumalabas, sinasabi ni Pythagoras, we have thoughts in our minds. We have thoughts in our minds, all connected to one another under some pattern or rule. Alright? And that's what we want to see, how the connections of all our thoughts in our minds happen, so that we can see the harmony among our thoughts. And that became a central interest in philosophy. And in fact, sa dami ng mga thoughts natin in our minds, it will take an entire lifetime to understand. Kaya gusto niya to spend this entire lifetime, not just as a matter of hobby. In fact, hindi pa nga tayo tapos hanggang ngayon. Hindi pa natin nakaklaro. Kahit nga meron tayong neural networking, alright? Networking ng mga items in our brains. Kahit naman tayo may understanding ng how neural networking can be modeled using computers, hindi pa natin makumpleto eh. So tama si Pythagoras, ano? Entire lifetime eh. Ayan. Nasusundan pa ba ang usapan? O tulog na kayo? Nasusundan ba? Sabihin niyo sa akin, ha? Okay. So, with this hobby, later, like I said, we have come to invent so many things that we still do today, you know, so many activities. And so that's your classic definition of philosophy. Love of wisdom, because you put all your thoughts together under some system. connected to one another under some harmony so that you can understand, for example, how our thoughts about numbers can happen so that we understand some rule like what rule? A square plus B square plus C square, equals C square. Alright? Kaya si Pythagoras sabi niya, between our thoughts about numbers, there must be rules that we have to discover. And he introduced to us what we today call systems analysis. Doing philosophy is basically systems analysis. We want to see how the harmony, the coherence among our thoughts happen. And yung coherent thoughts altogether, yan na nga ang sinasabi ni Pythagoras, wisdom. Alright? Wisdom. Now may catch. Ano yung sabihin? Ay kahit naman ang daming laman ng utak mo at wala namang connection na makita, hindi systematic, ay wala kang wisdom. Alright? There you go. Ano yung classic definition of philosophy? Love of wisdom. And why do you love wisdom? Why do you have deep interest in wisdom? You want to find out how our thoughts hang together as a system in our mind. How harmony happens. How coherence happens. And this is the catch. The more coherent, the more reliable your prediction of the future. Conversely, the less coherent, the less reliable our prediction of the future. Yan. Ano yan? Classic. Classic definition ng philosophy. Alright? Kaso, sabi nga natin, dumating ang panahon na invento yung science. Nung na-invento yung science, naging more sophisticated ang pag-iisip ng tao beyond philosophy. Kailan? Nung 1500s. And then, of course, we have the modern times. And then, of course, we have the modern times. Nung modern times, medyo nag-iba ng konti. Hindi naman nag-iba, nagbago ng konti yung ating pananaw ng philosophy. Ano yung pagbabago? Yung pagbabago ay, sandali ha, ito. Ang maraming scholars nagsasabi, including yung aking mentor dito sa UP dati, si Dr. Armando Bonifacio, nagsasabi sila, there are what you might call modern senses or meanings of the word philosophy. Alright? Sabi nila, meron. Yan. Alright? Ano yung modern senses of philosophy? Una, actually, tatlo. Yung una, philosophy as a term actually means some kind of a reflective method. Ayan. It's some kind of a reflective method. Reflective, di ibig sabihin may kinalaman sa salamin. Alright? Punta ka somewhere, kuha ka ng salamin, and then may reflection. Ayun. Alright? So, sundan ba? Okay, niloloko ko lang kayo. Salamin, ha? Well, tama naman yung sinasabi ko at mali rin at the same time. Alright, reflection. Balik tayo kay Pythagoras. You see, we have our minds. Yes, we have thoughts in our minds. We observe there are trees in our backyard. And we observe there are mountains on the horizons that we can see. We observe that there are fields around the mountains, and we observe that there are birds and the bees and your pet kalabaw somewhere in your backyard. All right? Yan. What's the point? Our minds are like mirrors. Our minds are like mirrors because the tree that you see, you have some representation of that in your mind. The Carabao that you see, you have some representation of that Carabao in your mind. All right? The birds that you see, the same. All right? So, your mind reflects somehow your world. Now, when you go into what? Paying so much attention to what you have in your mind, that's called reflection. All right? Nagre-reflect ka. Or sometimes called introspection. All right? Introspection. So far, so good. Yan. Ngayon, yung ancient people, hindi natin katulad. Bakit? Ay, teka. Hindi nyo pala nakita to, no? Kainis. Ulitin natin. Alright? Okay. Ang sinasabi ko kanina na hindi nyo nga nakita. Alright? We're now sharing. Alright? Ang sinasabi natin, ito. You observe around you, you see trees. You see your pet kalabaw. Alright? You see on the horizon some mountain. You see the rice fields. Alright? Sorry, laki sa bukid ako eh. Yan ang mga nasa isip ko eh. And your mind is like a mirror. A mirror that contains representation of your pet kalabaw in your mind. Alright? A mirror that has representation of your birds over yonder. Same with the tree, of course. So, like a mirror, your mind reflects what you see. And when you pay attention to what you see in your mind, that's called reflection. Or sometimes called introspection. Yan. So, okay na. Nakita na natin yung binabanggit ko kanina. So far, so good. All right. Hindi ko alam kung nakita niyo yung binabanggit ko kanina kay Thales. Right? Ang sabi nga natin, in the modern times, may 3 senses or meanings ang philosophy. Yung unang sense, reflective method. And nabanggit ko nga, as I was saying earlier, na ang mga ancient peoples, hindi natin kapareho when it comes to how we see these items in our minds. How do we see these items in our minds? It's not the same. All right? It's not the same. Nabanggit ko na sa inyo ito eh. When they hear voices in their minds, they say, these are the voices of the gods and the deities. Kagaya ng si Herodotus na tinanong as a historian, bakit ang dami-dami mo nasusulat, ang galing mo naman, how do you do that? Sabi niya, I don't really understand. I just hear voices of the gods and the deities and I write what they say. Eh kayo, sabi ko nga, excuse me, kagaya ni Dua Lipa, when you hear voices in your mind, you think they're yours. And then you put music into what you have in your mind. And then, you sell those thoughts in your mind with music and you become very popular. Diba? Parang BTS. Oh my God, idol kayang mga yan. So, we think of the voices in our minds as ours. We think of these items in our minds as ours. Alright? And that kind of attitude began with the ancient Greeks. That's what we're saying. Originally, yung mga ancient Greeks ang nagsasabi niyan. Alright? Kasi nga nauso sa kanila yung debate, nauso sa kanila yung reasoning, and after all the centuries of debating and reasoning, they began to say, well, atin yun. And so when you use the term philosophy, you use it to refer to a very specific kind of reflection. And what kind of reflection? You look into your thoughts. What kind of reflection? You look into your thoughts and think that they're yours and see how they come together under a system, all right? And see how they come together under a system so that you see how coherent they are. Okay. So far, so good. So, what do we say? We say that one of the modern senses of the term philosophy, you use philosophy to refer to a very specific reflective method. And another way of looking at using the term philosophy, we use the term philosophy to, all right, ba't ba ayaw nito? Sorry We use the term philosophy sometimes to refer to some kind of intellectual presupposition. Ito, mahabang kwentuhan to, so makinig kayo. Alright, sana huwag kayong makakatulog. Yung second modern sense or meaning of the term philosophy, sometimes you don't use it to refer to a reflective method. Sometimes you use it to refer to an intellectual presupposition. Alright? Ngayon, ano ba yung intellectual presupposition na pinag-uusapan natin? Alright? Presupposition. Alright? Yeah. Okay. Kilala nyo ba ito? Dali Let me show you. Kasi mamaya na lang. Okay. Tinanong ko kayo. Anong tanong ko sa inyo? Do parallel lines intersect? You have one line, You have one line, another line, and given a bisecting line, this is a right angle triangle and this is a right angle triangle. And what are you saying? Kung ito right angle triangle. Kung ito ay perpendicular, Kung ito ay perpendicular at ito ay perpendicular, di ibig sabihin, these parallel lines will never intersect, di ba? Tama? Now, si Isaac Newton, nung inimbento niya yung physics the way Isaac Newton knows physics, ang ginagamit niya, Euclidean geometry. Yung Euclidean geometry, sino umimbento? Di si Euclid. Alright? Ang ginagamit niya, yung Euclidean geometry. And using Euclidean geometry, you have Newtonian physics as we know it. We call it mechanics. May problema. Bakit? Ano yung problema nitong sina Newton? Kasi, according to Newton, yung transfer of energy will always require some medium for the transfer of the energy. Alright? Now, merong isang mama. Tinanggalan niya ng laman yung isang flask. Alright? Tinanggalan niya ng laman yung isang flask. Tapos nilagyan ng stopper. Tapon. So, what you have inside is a vacuum. Now, nagsindi siya ng kandila. Nung nagsindi ng kandila, ano nangyari? Alright? Nung nagsindi siya ng kandila, naobserbahan, light can travel through a vacuum. Aba, paano nangyari yun? How can light travel through nothing? Wala namang medium dun sa loob ng vacuum And yet, you can see light traveling through it. Alright? Nangyari yan noong 19th century. Naobserbahan nila yan, noong Age of Inventors. Meron pa isa nangyari. Gumawa sila ng isang vacuum tube, pinadaanan ng electricity. Ano nangyari? Nakita nila, plasma. Nakita nila, electricity can travel through a vacuum. Big question mark. Walang medium There's no medium at all, and yet electricity can travel through nothing. Paano nangyari yun? Big puzzle. Alright? For a long time, hindi nila maipaliwanag yan at ang dami-daming mga hindi maipaliwanag using Newtonian physics. Dumating yung generation ni Albert Einstein. Si Albert Einstein at saka si Henry Poincaré at kung sino-sino pa, at saka si Boltzmann. Alright, kilala niyo si Boltzmann? Yung kapatid ni Ant-Man, alright? Now, anyway, itong generation na ito, focus on Einstein, sila ay familiar with non-Euclidean geometry. Kagaya ng geometry ni Lobachevsky. Kagaya ng geometry ni Gauss. Alright? Sino pa? Si Riemann. Anyway, what we're saying is merong alternative geometry. Ano yung alternative geometry? Ipaliwanag natin na focus on Einstein. Yung mga physicists, lalo ngayon, ang paniwala, ang universe nagsimula sa isang singularity. Yung singularity na yan, nagkaroon ng Big Bang. Merong explosive event, tawag natin Big Bang. And since the Big Bang, the universe has been expanding in all directions. Beginning with that singularity. Expanding in all directions. Alright? So far, so good. Okay? Now, with the expansion in all directions, ano nangyari? Well, imagine niyo you want to draw a line. So, nag-draw ka ng line. Drawing ka ng line eh. Alright? Drawing ka ng line. Kaso, every time you draw a line, it takes time to draw the line. Alright? From t of 0 to t of n, pag nag-drawing ka ng line, it will take time to draw the line. Even the shortest line that you want to draw will take time. Alright? Nasusundan po ba? Tingnan ko nga, may comment. Alright. Sorry Miss Mohika, hindi ko nga na-screen share eh. Inulit ko naman eh. Alright? So, now, balik tayo din ha. So, ano nangyari? Etong mag-drawing ka ng line, habang nagdo-drawing ka ng line, nag-e-expand ang universe eh. So, ano nangyari? Nung nag-drawing ka ng line, yung line mo, because it has taken so much time, nag-expand ang universe, naging kurbado, nag-curve. Kasi nag-expand yung mundo eh. So, in an ever-expanding universe, alright? Because it's ever-expanding, all lines that you draw will curve. Alright? All lines that you draw will curve. Alright? All lines that you draw will curve. Kasi nag-expand nga eh. Alright? So, ano nangyari? Di simple. Alright? Under non-Euclidean geometry terms, when you draw a line, it curves. And if it's parallel to another line, it will also curve. And then, they will intersect. Alright? Because under an ever-expanding universe, all lines are curving. Alright? Under these terms, when you draw a triangle, the sum of the angles of all triangles you draw will always be more than 180 degrees. It's not like when you have Euclidean geometry, every time you draw a triangle, the sum of the angles will be equal to 180 degrees. Now, si Newton, ang paniwala niya kay Euclid. Si Einstein, ang paniwala niya, hindi kay Euclid. Ang paniwala niya sa non-Euclidean geometry. Under Newtonian physics, marami kang maipapaliwanag na hindi kayang ipaliwanag na Einsteinian physics better. Pero under Einsteinian physics, merong maipapaliwanag na hindi kaya ipaliwanag ng Newtonian physics, including the behavior of light, the behavior of magnetism, the behavior of electricity. Yan. Under kay Einstein, parallel lines can intersect. Alright? Pero under kay Newton, parallel lines do not intersect. They have different intellectual presuppositions. Ayun ang gusto nating sabihin. Now, bakit intellectual? Kasi pag-iisip lang natin yan. Bakit? Hindi mo naman nahahawakan, hindi mo napipisil-pisil, naamoy-amoy yung parallel lines. Alangan naman sabihin ko, uy, tikman mo ito. Parallel line ito tapos titikman mo. Ay, oo nga, parallel line nga ito. Hindi naman yun Intellectual lang pinag-uusapan natin. Puro may kinalaman doon sa ating isipan. At presupposition, bakit? Wala tayong absolute way of proving na tama si Einstein, mali si Newton, o tama si Newton, mali si Einstein. Kaya ang sabi natin, intellectual presupposition lang. Alright? Yun ang ating sinasabi. Alright? Intellectual presupposition lang siya. Alright? Now, problema. Bakit? Kasi pag minsan, merong dalawang tao, pareho ng intellectual presupposition. Pero, magkaiba pa rin ng philosophy. Halimbawa, pag Hudyo, Muslim at Kristiyano, pareho ng intellectual presupposition. Ano yung intellectual presupposition? Di, naniniwala sila iisa ang Diyos. Kaso, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin pareho sila ng philosophy. Para sa Muslim, para sa Kristiyano, isa lang ang pwede mong mapang-asawa. Pero para sa Muslim, pwede 4, pwede 5, bahala ka. Depende. Paano kaya ako pwedeng mag-Muslim? Nag-ibiro na ako. Yung Muslim, yung Kristiyano, yung Hudyo, pare-pareho ng isang intellectual presupposition. There is only one God. So how do you now distinguish between the different philosophies? Ang sabi ng marami na scholar, sometimes you use the term philosophy to refer to what can be called as a belief system. Yan. Yan yung pangatlo. Belief system. Alright? We use the term philosophy to mean a belief system. Not the reflective method, not the intellectual presupposition, the belief system. Yan. So far, so good. Alright? Baka namimiss nyo na ako So, we have many thoughts in our minds. They are interconnected with one another. Alright? Sabi nga ni Pythagoras, system, interconnected, may coherence, merong harmony. Alright? So, we can use the term philosophy to refer to that entire repertoire of thoughts in your minds interconnected to one another. Not only just one or two, the intellectual presupposition, not just the reflective method, but the entire system. Many times, we refer to the entire system when we use the term philosophy. Alright? Ulitin natin. Ano ang sabi ni Pythagoras? Naghahanap tayo ng harmony sa ating isipan. Naghahanap tayo ng coherence sa ating isipan. Gusto nating makita ang mga rules by which our thoughts in our minds are related to one another. You know, your thought that one day the sun will rise from the east and that tomorrow the sun will rise from the east and so on and so forth. It is that coherence that will take an entire lifetime for us to understand. Now, if you look at the entire gamut, the entire repertoire of all your thoughts in your mind, you call that your belief system. All right? So, in the modern times, we can use the term philosophy to refer to a reflective method, but sometimes only to your intellectual presupposition, but sometimes to the entire belief system. Now, may catch. We still we understand. We still, just like Pythagoras, we still believe that our kind of reflective method is somehow related to our kind of intellectual presupposition, which is somehow related to our kind of belief system. So you have your reflective method, it is related to your intellectual presupposition, which is related to your belief system, which determines your reflective method, which determines your intellectual presupposition. Ganun pa rin. Nandun pa rin ang usapan. Kagaya ng sinasabi ni Pythagoras, what we think of as reflective method, intellectual presupposition, belief system, they're interconnected. Alright? So, yung classic definition, hindi naman malayo sa modern definition. Binigyan lamang ng details ng modern definition yung philosophy. Okay. Any questions sa inyo? Sige nga, tingnan ko yung mga tanong ninyo dyan sa ating well, pwede kayong mag-comment sa sandali ha. Pwede kayong mag-comment dito sa YouTube. Okay. Comments? Kung wala, doon sa kabila. Kung wala, dito sa kabila. Dito sa ating classroom board. Comments? Ito. Dami pala yun. May nag-comment. Okay. Magandang umaga. Ay. Wala kasi. Balik tayo dito sa YouTube. Any questions from you? Wala? Di pali. Ihabol nyo na lang, ha? Kung may comments kayo, or may question, ihabol nyo na lang. Pero i-summarize natin yung pinag-usapan natin. Sabi natin, nagka-demokrasya, therefore, nagbagong ugali ng mga Greeks. Alright? Na-highlight sa kanilang reasoning. Nakita nila yung advantage na pagka nagdidebate, mas nahahasa natin ang ating mga ideas, may synergy of ideas. Pagkatapos, nalaman natin that kings and generals and priests can be wrong. Alright? And then, inevitably, we have come to believe that men can have control over their destinies independent of the gods and the deities. Alright? That there are many, many tools on the basis of our capacity to reason with which we can predict the future. And looking for these tools, at that time, ang ginagamit nating discipline ay the discipline of philosophy. So philosophy, we can say, is a discipline that gives control over our destiny, those who are interested in it. At yan nga si Pythagoras, gusto niya makita, how is it that we have control? How is it that we have understanding of the mechanics of how our thoughts in our minds relate to one another? Alright? Tinatawag niyang harmony. Alright? And kaya sabi niya, ang pag-aaral ng philosophy, love of wisdom. Alright? Wisdom, in other words, some kind of a system with which you can predict and explain. Alright? Pero pagdating ng modern times, dinagdagan natin. Pag minsan, sa sobrang dami ng pinag-uusapan, gusto natin mag-focus. Ang focus lang natin yung reflective method na very unique to philosophy. Pag minsan naman, sobrang focus, ang gusto nating focus, yung intellectual presupposition lang, pagkakaiba ni Albert Einstein kay Isaac Newton. Pagkakaiba pag-uusapan natin later, ni Albert Einstein kay Niels Bohr. Yan. Pero pag minsan, we have to talk about the entire belief system. As in, for example, the entire belief system of quantum physics, kaibang-kaiba yan sa entire belief system ng Einsteinian physics or general and special theory of relativity. Alright? Which reminds me, may tanong ako. Ano kaya ang system na ginagamit ni Duterte? May system kaya yung Dintris na yun? And reliable ba yung system na? In other words, if you use that system, when you predict the future, what you predict happens. You know what I'm talking about. But we have a problem. Why? Because we are in a democracy. He can say what he wants. He can think what he wants. All right? It's his right. All right? We have to live with him. All right? Any question? Sir, pwede ba ninyong ulitin yung tungkol sa belief system? O sige, merong 5 minutes. Sige. Belief system. Balik tayo dyan, ha? Belief system. Ulitin natin yung sa belief system, ha? Ano bang gusto nating sabihin? Ang sinasabi natin, you think of human minds as a basket of goods or thoughts. And these thoughts are related to one another. Kagaya nga sinabi natin, one day the sun is from the days, another day, another day, another day. Therefore, as a rule, whenever the sun rises, it rises from days. Therefore, if tomorrow the sun will rise, it will rise from days. Therefore, here you have a way of looking at how reasoning works, and therefore how you can predict, and therefore how you can have more chance of survival. Anyway, yan. Meron kang system. Pag sinabi mong system, merong presumed connections. Presumed connections between all the components of your system or components of your set. And as you get to have connection, dapat merong harmony, dapat maayos. Alright? Hindi pwedeng sala-salabid. Hindi pwedeng nagko-contradict. Kailangan may harmony. Now, as a matter of example, you can look at Newtonian physics as one good example of a system. Yung Newtonian physics, very systematic yan. Even Euclidean geometry is a kind of system. In fact, yan ang pinakang influential na system sa ating buhay. Euclidean geometry. You begin only with 5 axioms from where you derive some other rules, from where you derive some other rules. By the time you know it, you have an entire system of rules called Euclidean geometry. All right? Now, yung Einsteinian physics is a very different belief system from Newtonian physics. Kasi magkaiba sila ng intellectual presupposition. And what we're saying is, when you use the term philosophy, sometimes you do not mean simply a reflective method. When you use the term philosophy, sometimes you mean the entire, sorry, let me repeat. When you use the term philosophy, sometimes we mean reflective method. Sometimes we mean intellectual presupposition. But many times, actually, when we use the term philosophy, we refer to the entire belief system or, pakinggan nyo mabuti, the entire mental model. Si Duterte may kanyang mental model. According to his mental model, ang importante, labanan. Ang mundo ng mga naglalabanan lagi, suntukan, alright? Given his mental model, he has a way of interpreting the universe. We have our own mental model here at UP. What is music to us is noise to him. Yan. Bakit? Kasi magkaiba tayo ng system. And, of course, kaya nga tayo nag-aaral ngayon, Mr. Morales, para nga maintindihan natin yung details ng ano ba yung system? Alright? Ano ba yung system ng philosophy lalo na? Okay? So far, so good. Okay. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat po. I hope marami kayong natutunan. Kahit kanina nagkamali ako, daldal ng daldal, hindi pa na nag-share yung screen ko. But kung meron mang kakulangan, di bawi tayo next meeting. Sabihin nyo sa akin, ha? Kung anong kakulangan, ilagay nyo dito sa comment sa YouTube or ilagay nyo doon sa comment sa ating Google Classrooms. Magandang tanghali po. Pasensya na, napasobra na naman ako ng daldal. Para masaya. Okay? Ingat! 276,000 na ang mga kaso sa 276,000. Keep in mind, nagsimula lang yan sa iisa noong January 30. Gawa nga kasi na may kanyang mental model yan si Duterte na kanya. Sige. Goodbye. Bukas, next meeting ulit.